Welcome back, dear viewers. Now it's time for our daily press review, and we are joined here in the studio with Ms. Sama Eissa. She's an international law expert. Good morning. But now, before we start our news for today, we are joining over the phone with our correspondent from Ethiopia, Linda Abdelatif, who will shed more light on President Fattah al-Sisi's activities on Tuesday. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Sima.
Can you tell us about President Fattah al-Sisi's activities on Tuesday and his expected speech to the AU summit in Addis Ababa?
Well, yes, Shireen. After a few minutes from now, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will be having a meeting for the Committee of the African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change for the adoption of the report concerning this committee. And President al-Sisi will indeed hand the presidency of this committee to the president of Gabon. Now, following that, there will be a closed session that will be attended by the African leaders and heads of state, and it will include adopting the recommendation of the retreat of the heads of state and government concerning the institutional reform of the African Union. You know that the Rwandan president has been tasked to lead the reforms process to ensure the challenges and strengths of the African Union are adequately addressed in an effort to further the continent's development. Now, also there will be, or this closed session will also tackle the adoption of a report on the African prayer mechanism, and also will adopt a report on the state of peace and security in Africa. And also this closed session will also include, let's say, or during this closed session, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, as I mentioned, who is the coordinator of the Committee of the Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, will submit a report on the activities related to climate change. Now, today, as you of course know, is the last day of the summit, and it will also, following the closed session that I've mentioned, there will be appointments to the organs of the African Union, including the 8 commissioners, 2 judges of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the 11 members of the Advisory Board on Corruption, and 1 member of the African Union Commission on International Law.
Linda Abdelatif, our correspondent in Addis Ababa, thank you. And back to you, Ms. Sama, and we are still discussing the African Union Summit in Ethiopia, and President Fattah al-Sisi participates in the African Summit. The 28th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union started on Monday in Addis Ababa at the level of presidents and heads of governments of the African Union, with the attendance of President Fattah al-Sisi. President Sisi participated in the closed session of the African Summit, in which the African leaders discussed a number of issues, including the finance of the African Union. They also discussed what has been achieved towards the establishment of African Continental Free Trade Area. So, Sama, what is the significance of Egypt's participation in the African Union Summit, and how do you see the establishment of African Continental Free Trade Area?
Definitely, this news is very positive.
Yes.
And for several years earlier, we've been neglecting our cooperation with the African countries in the African Union. So definitely, this is a very positive step. And the free trade area is going to be very beneficial, because if we started to create an economic bond based on mutual interest, this can enhance our political situation with the African countries, taking in consideration what's happening with Ethiopia and the dam. So the more we're involved together positively in cooperation and in creating something that has a win-win situation, it can definitely benefit also the political side, in which has to do with the dam and Ethiopia. And also it's very positive, on the other hand, that Morocco started to join back the African Union after they were very disturbed from the earlier event that happened with the land that were claimed. And this is actually very promising. So we're having more countries getting engaged within the Union, and the Union can start to be more weighty within cooperation and creating something that can have the Union as an arena that's doing something influential.
So also the sidelines of the African Summit, President Sisi met with Ethiopian Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, and they, of course they discussed the Ethiopian dam. And how do you see developments of this file?
I think now that what's done, it's done. what's better is always to be on the
Yes.
safe side and not to create conflict. And as President Sisi always comes out in the media and the press where he comforts the Egyptian citizen because this is a very critical situation. I think if anything, if they are meeting and
Yes.
cooperating and talking, we're hoping for the best. We're trying to create a mutual interest where they do not harm Egypt and come over our water percent that comes for the country. And on the other hand, we don't really take something that belongs to them.
And moving to Al-Yom Al-Saba newspaper, and we read Prime Minister holds meeting with Minister of Petroleum. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail held a meeting on Monday with the Minister of Petroleum Mineral Resources Tariq Al-Mullah. During the meeting, the Prime Minister stressed the government's keenness to develop the petroleum and mineral resources sector as well as the projects that are implemented in this vital sector. Ismail said that this sector represents the locomotive of various aspects of sustainable development as it contributes to the availability of energy sources which are necessary to establish several developmental projects. The Prime Minister said that Egypt has many promising opportunities and potentials that enable the sector to maximize the available natural mineral wealth. Ismail also urged the Petroleum Ministry to utilize their resources and promote for all mining areas to attract more investments in this sector. So how do you evaluate the government efforts to develop petroleum and mineral resources sector and its efforts to attract more investments to this important field?
I think it's very important to focus more on this area because Egypt, economically, we are in a very critical situation. And as I read the news, this is a source of income that can increase our revenue. So we need to open more space and do rules that are more attractive for foreign investors to come and explore, like what happened with Zohr, because we are in desperate need for any income to the country with the current situation and the critical crisis we're having with tourism also.
Okay, I'm moving to Al-Shuruq newspaper, and we read Minister of Interior praises cooperation with the armed forces. Minister of Interior General Magdi Al-Ghaffar stressed that the armed forces and the police are the two wings of security and stability to the Egyptian nation. The Minister of Interior added that they will remain together in the face of challenges and in fighting terrorist elements that try to undermine the progress of the nation and its achievements. General Magdi Al-Ghaffar also praised their close cooperation with the armed forces in fighting terrorism. This came as the Minister of Interior received Minister of Defense, First Lieutenant General Sidq Subhi, and Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Mahmoud Hayazi, as well as a delegation from the Armed Forces top commanders. Their visit came to offer their congratulations on the occasion of the 65th anniversary of Police Day. So, to what extent the security forces are succeeding in cooperating to fight terrorism in Egypt?
Well, definitely after the revolution, the trust between the people and the police has been really shaky. And as the years started to roll over, they started to create this bond again. And what's happening now with Sinai and terrorism and everything that is threatening the national security of Egypt, we need the cooperation of both forces that we have, the armed forces and the police. The armed forces is always has the soft spot in the Egyptian people's heart, where we always rely on it, even in the two revolution and even what happened in the revolution of the 30th. And for this to come from the armed forces to congratulate and enhance the self-confidence of the police, it's very good. And I think as years going also to roll over, they need to cooperate together because the threat is very heavy on Egypt these days.
Yes, and moving to Al-Yom Al-Saba newspaper, Egypt condemns the terrorist attack on Islamic Center in Canada. In a statement issued by the Foreign Ministry, Egypt condemned the terrorist attack against the worshippers in the Islamic Cultural Center of the Canadian city of Quebec. 6 people were killed and 8 others injured in the attack, which was launched by gunmen. The statement stressed Egypt's government and people are standing with the Canadian government and the friendly people of Canada. The statement offered Egypt's condolences to the families of the victims and stressed the need for further concerted international efforts to eliminate terrorism, which is targeting security and stability in all parts of the world. So first, let's focus on the timing of this terrorist attack. especially that it comes after U.S. President Donald Trump banned the citizens from some Arab countries to enter the United States for 3 months. So what's your take on this?
Precisely, I cannot help but link the
Yes.
two events together after President of the most hegemonic country in the world announced a ban on a number of Islamic countries from stepping in the United States. Then a terrorist attack happens like that, in which the Muslims are the victims, they're not the terrorist groups in this situation. And also it creates a shift within the perspective, because the Muslims are not always the ones who are terrorists and attacking and causing a commotion, but in this situation they are the victim. So this, if anything, it shows us that there are two sides for every story, and Muslims are just a name, that a mask the terrorist group take, but it has nothing to do with Islam. And in this case, the Muslims in a mosque were Muslims. So if anything, overall, it just highlights the fact that terrorism has no religion. It's not bound by Muslims or Jews or Hindus or anything. Terrorist attack is a terrorist attack that creates conflicts and threatens innocent people. So this just creates a shift in perspective where it can happen also the other way around.
And still with اليوم السابع, and we read Speaker of the House of Representatives and Minister of International Cooperation visit Aswan. Speaker of the House of Representatives Dr. Ali Abdel Al and Minister of International Cooperation Dr. Sahar Nasr paid a visit to Aswan Governorate to inspect a number of developmental projects and how the challenges facing the people in Aswan and their needs. And know the challenges facing the people in Aswan and their needs, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives said that the aim of the visit is to listen to people and know their needs and coordinate with the government to meet them. Dr. Ali Abdel Al said that he agreed with the Minister of International Cooperation to develop Central Hospital and be ready to receive all cases and include the latest devices. Meanwhile, Minister of International Cooperation Dr. Sahar Nasr said that 30% of the finance for the small and medium enterprises will be allocated to Upper Egypt. So how do you evaluate government's efforts to develop Upper Egypt?
Well, honestly, just to be very blunt, here in Egypt we have this trait of we get too ahead of ourselves, and by default we're always enthusiastic and we want to help, and the small and the medium entrepreneurship within the country deserve attention, but also it deserve a very good planning. Meaning, if they're willing also to develop and finance the small and the medium entrepreneurship within Aswan and Upper Egypt, then they need to train them, have some institution that can provide them with skills and training and the know-how for success. Because if without planning and training those people and leaving amount of money within their hand to develop, they don't have the know-how. So they have less chances of success. So we're trying to hire these chances of success. So instead of having something so promising and we're going to develop and do so and so, maybe we need to go into the root causes of creating a successful outcome by training them and giving them skills and workshops that create an outcome that's successful and can create a model for others to follow in the future.
And moving to الأخبار أخبار اليوم, we read the following headline: Russian security delegation arrives in Cairo to inspect security measures in airports. A high-level Russian security delegation arrives in Cairo to follow up the security measures in the passenger terminals, which are allocated to the Russian passengers in the airports of Cairo, Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada after installing biometric devices. So, in your opinion, to what extent resuming Russian flights to Egypt will give a boost to tourism?
Well, actually, this is like the third time we come across a news like this, and nothing changed at all, exactly like you just mentioned. So if this is the case, then we need to see anything promising. For instance, they need to tell their citizens that Egypt now is a safe spot and the tourism starts flowing, because they always say the same message but was delivered different wordings and nothing happens in the end. So this is a huge question mark. So if this is the case, where are the people coming from Russia?
And moving to اليوم السابع newspaper, and we read Iraq asks Trump administration to reconsider travel ban. Iraq has asked the United States to reconsider the travel ban on its citizens, taking a more diplomatic line than the Iraqi parliament, which had demanded the government to retaliate. Iraqi foreign ministry said on Monday in a statement that it is necessary that the new American administration reconsider this decision. So now we start to see the repercussions of this weird decision. So how do you see reaction by Iraqi government?
For the Iraqi government, they're going to create the
Yes.
same otherwise. Like if you're banning Iraqi people from stepping in the U.S., you're going to ban U.S. citizens from stepping in Iraq. But in this situation, Iraq didn't win anything.
Yes.
They're still losing. So we need to consider things from two different perspectives. From the United States, what Trump is aiming to do, from his perspective, like he
Yes.
said in the integration speech, he wants to protect the American citizens, his people, from terrorism. So he's banning the countries which their high potential terrorist groups can come from them. But on the other hand, a lot of innocent people are going to have to pay for this. A lot of people left their home, left their houses. It's insane. It has a very number of repercussions. But on the other hand, we need to examine Trump is trying to fight terrorism and terrorist group that the United States created in the first place. So they create something and then it comes back and bite them. So
Yes.
they do something outside the box as in solution to fight something that is their own creation.
Yes.
Same happened with Taliban, with Al-Qaeda. So history repeats itself with the United States. So they need to sit with themselves and examine why they keep repeating the same mistake over and over. I'm really hoping that Trump administration put an end for this era in which the United States keep creating terrorist group and then they start to come back and bite them and they go outside of themselves like what Trump is doing to handle the chaos they created originally. So what they said is for 3 months. Let's see what the coming days will happen.
Okay.
And
Do you expect Trump's decision the coming days to include more Arab countries?
maybe yes, maybe no, but
Yes.
let's be rational. Like how analysis made, like we examine old behavior, examine the future behavior, like we start to create a pattern. So the pattern, he needs to protect his government from terrorist group coming from Muslim countries. But on the other hand, speculation is coming about Saudi Arabia and also is coming about Egypt. But Donald Trump had several friendly calls with Egypt, and even when he started to be officially United States president, he had phone calls for 3 just countries, and Egypt, President Sisi was one of them.
Yes.
So this gives us something promising that maybe Egypt won't be included,
Yes.
but its a national security is a priority. And also with Saudi Arabia, it's going to have lots of repercussions, even though he's obviously so angry at Saudi Arabia. So the coming days will tell, but I'm hoping that Egypt will not be included, considering the past behavior with President Sisi and his positive comments on Egypt.
So as an international law expert, is this legal, what he's doing?
No, it's not constitutional. Within the
Yes.
Constitution of the United States, he's not allowed to do so.
So
It's not
can they stop him?
constitutional. They can't stop him, but in the end of the day, he's the president and he
Yes.
can play over the role itself, the
Okay.
rules that he is having
Yes.
under the grip of his hand. But summary for the situation
Yes.
right now, it's not constitutional. That's why people are protesting and everyone is rebelling against it on the streets.
And moving to Al-Wafd, and we read the Egyptian bourse losses, 9.5 billion pounds. The Egyptian stock markets ended on Monday trading session in the red zone, affected by selling activities of Egyptian and Arab investors. The benchmark index, EGX 30, lost 1.79% to close at 12,926.07 points. Similarly, the small and medium shares index, EGX 70, declined 1.25% to 476.07 points, while the broader index, EGX 100, went down 1.27% to 1,169.26 points. And now with the weather forecast, and meteorologists predict cold weather to prevail Tuesday on the north of the country until the north of Upper Egypt, and warmer weather on the south of Upper Egypt during daytime, but very cold at night. Temperatures in Cairo are expected to be 16 the morning and 8 at night. Medium and low level clouds are expected on the north of the country, with rain on the northern coasts and light rain on the delta and Cairo. Wind will be active on the Red Sea, possibly affecting maritime navigation. Waves in the Mediterranean are expected to average between 1.5 and 2 meters, while waves in the Red Sea are expected to average between 2 and 2.5 meters high, with the northwestern surface wind on both seas. This was our last news item in our daily press review, and I'd like to thank my guest for today, Ms. Eissa, international law expert. And now, dear viewers, we'll go for a short break and we'll be back with the breakfast show, so stay tuned.